What happens when one of Hollywood's most composed and admired stars finally snaps? When patience turns into defiance, and a morning talk show becomes ground zero for something no one saw coming? That's exactly what happened when Gal Gadot, better known to the world as Wonder Woman, walked onto The View. What was supposed to be an easy interview turned into a live confrontation that left the hosts speechless, the audience frozen, and the internet on fire. One moment, it was smiles and small talk. The next, it was a showdown that no one in that studio will ever forget. The studio lights came up like any other morning. The air buzzed with small laughter. Whoopi smiled toward the crowd as the applause sign flashed. "We've got a special guest today," she said, voice warm, easy. Then the curtain parted and Gal Gadot stepped out. Her walk was graceful, but her face, something about it, wasn't the usual red carpet smile. It was polite, poised, but distant. When she took her seat, Whoopi welcomed her back with open arms. "Always a pleasure having you, Gal." She smiled slightly. "Thank you, Whoopi. It's always interesting to be here." The audience chuckled, not knowing whether to take it as humor or a warning. Sunny Hostin leaned in, shuffling her notes, her expression professional but curious. "Gal, you've been pretty outspoken lately about global issues, especially online. Some people really admire that. Others think celebrities should stay out of politics. Do you ever worry you might alienate fans?" Joy Behar glanced across the table. Even Whoopi's smile tightened. Gal didn't rush to answer. "I think staying silent in the face of suffering is far more dangerous than speaking up," she said finally, calm but firm. "If using my voice for peace makes some people uncomfortable, maybe the question is why that discomfort exists." A few people clapped, but most just sat there, waiting to see what would happen next. Sunny nodded, but her voice sharpened. "That's fair. But some say your posts are a little one-sided, especially about recent conflicts." Before she could finish, Gal cut in. She never interrupted. "With respect, Sunny," she said, her tone steady but edged. "When people are dying, it's not about sides. It's about humanity." The audience reacted instantly, half gasps, half applause. Whoopi's eyes darted between them, sensing the tension rise like static before a storm. Sunny shifted back in her chair, forcing a polite smile. "I understand your point," she said carefully. "But context matters. As journalists, we're supposed to look at all sides." Gal leaned forward just slightly, enough that the studio could feel it. "And as humans," she said softly, "we're supposed to care when people suffer. Silence in the face of suffering is more dangerous than speaking." For a moment, nobody breathed. Then a few scattered claps turned into real applause. Sunny wasn't ready to back off. She adjusted her papers again, pretending to glance at her notes, but keeping her eyes fixed on Gal. "Of course we all care about suffering," she said, her tone smoother now but laced with challenge. "But as journalists, we also have to look at context. Sometimes passion can blur balance. Some of your statements, people have said, don't always show both sides." The audience went quiet, waiting. Gal didn't flinch. Her voice came calm, almost too calm. "I understand, Sunny. It's just funny how that word, balance, only comes up when a woman speaks with conviction. When a man does, he's called brave. When a woman does, she's emotional." The sound hit like a spark in dry air. The crowd exploded into applause and gasps all at once. Whoopi leaned back, eyes wide, then tried to save the moment with a laugh. Okay, ladies, let's not turn this table into a battlefield. We just got new mugs." The audience laughed, grateful for the release. Even Joy forced a chuckle, raising her cup like a white flag. Sunny smiled, but it wasn't soft. It was sharp. "You've played powerful women your whole career, Gal," she said. "Wonder Woman, Cleopatra. But in real life, do you ever think there's a line between strength and self-righteousness?" The studio froze. Joy Bahar's grin faded. Even Alyssa Farah Griffin stopped breathing. The camera zoomed tight on Gal's face. No background, no laughter, just her. Her hands tightened slightly on the table, knuckles pale. For a heartbeat, she said nothing. Then quietly, "When people question your motives instead of your message, it says more about their intentions than yours." The audience clapped, slow at first, then louder, rising with conviction. Whoopi glanced at the floor director, signaling to stay with the shot. Gal leaned back just a little, calm again. "I can be wrong about many things," she said, voice steady, eyes unwavering, "but never about compassion." The room filled with applause again, real, full, and unfiltered. The applause faded, and Whoopi nodded toward the camera. "We'll be right back after this short break," she said, smiling just enough to hold the moment together. The lights dimmed slightly, and the music cue rolled in. But something went wrong. The red light above the camera didn't turn off right away. The mics were still live. The audience was still watching. Gal leaned in slightly, her voice low but firm, almost conversational. "You know, Sonny," she said quietly, "sometimes asking questions isn't about finding truth. Sometimes it's about protecting your own narrative." Sonny blinked, caught off guard. "Excuse me?" she asked, her smile still frozen in place but her tone sharper now. The camera operator hesitated, unsure whether to cut or stay. The floor manager waved from behind the set. "Wrap it now." But the control room was already arguing. "Did she just say what I think she said?" one producer asked. Another scribbled on a notepad. "Check legal before replay." The director leaned into his mic. Hold on her face, don't cut yet." The hum in the studio grew heavier, like static before thunder. Back on stage, Gal sat still, perfectly composed. No IFB, no notes, no noise in her ear. Just silence. Her hands rested gently on the table, fingers interlaced like a fighter lowering her weapon after landing the final blow. The camera zoomed in on her face, calm, resolute, unreadable. That single image would be clipped, frozen, and replayed 1,000 times within the hour. The internet would call it the look that ended the debate. Whoopi exhaled deeply, rubbing her temple. The set felt smaller now, the tension too big for the room to hold. She glanced at the floor producer, mouthing, "Cut the feed." But even as the screen finally faded to black, the energy didn't leave. For the first time that morning, the view felt less like a talk show and more like a live wire no one dared to touch. When the show came back from commercial, the air felt lighter for half a second. Whoopi smiled toward the camera, her voice steady, professional. "We're back with Gal Gadot, talking about her work, her activism, and her new film." Gal nodded, her smile polite, measured. "Pressure," she said, "is a privilege. It means people are listening, even when they don't agree." The audience clapped, relieved. For a fleeting moment, it felt like the tension might actually dissolve. But relief on live television never lasts long. Sunny straightened in her seat. She had papers now, printed quotes highlighted in yellow, a new weapon on the table. "Since you mentioned listening," she began, "I want to ask about one of your posts. Some people around the world called it tone deaf. There were even protests in a few cities. They said your message ignored the suffering on the other side." She slid one of the pages slightly toward Gal. "How do you respond to that kind of backlash?" The audience murmured, uneasy. Gal's eyes flicked briefly to the papers, then back to Sunny. "You're referring to my post calling for compassion for all victims," she said quietly. "Yes," Sunny replied, "but some people felt it lacked balance." Gal's tone stayed calm but firm. "When people are in pain, asking for balance is like asking them to measure grief. There's no scale for that." The studio went still. You could hear the air conditioning hum over the silence. Sunny leaned forward, pressing. I understand empathy, gal, but passion doesn't excuse ignorance. Sometimes good intentions cause harm. The words landed like a slap. Several gasps rippled through the crowd. Whoopi's eyebrows shot up. Joy's hand froze midway to her coffee cup. Gal didn't blink. She drew a slow breath, her voice low but cutting. I don't think compassion is ignorant, she said. And if caring about innocent lives offends people, then maybe we've forgotten what compassion even means. The applause came instantly, stronger, louder, emotional. A few people in the back stood up. The energy in the studio shifted again. Gal's face softened for a moment as she continued, her words trembling with something more human. I've seen what happens when people lose everything, she said quietly. I've seen conflict. I've served in uniform. I've held lives in my hands. No one moved. Even Sunny stayed silent, her pen still on the table. The audience's applause faded into stillness, the kind that feels sacred. Then Gal looked directly at Sunny again. The softness vanished. Accountability is fair, she said, her tone sharpening with every word, but selective outrage isn't. People pick and choose when to be offended. That's not justice. That's noise. The audience erupted again, louder than before. Cheers, whistles, the sound of people turning from spectators to believers. The tension didn't cool. It hardened. Sunny leaned in, elbows on the table, ready to reclaim control, but Gal beat her to it. Her tone was calm, but each word carried the weight of someone done with diplomacy. You know, Sunny, she said, truth gets lost when stories become weapons. When people stop asking what's real and start deciding who the villain is, the crowd murmured again, shifting uncomfortably. Alyssa Farrah Griffin jumped in, trying to smooth things over. Maybe we're all just seeing different sides of the same truth, she said gently. But Sunny didn't let it stand. No, Alyssa, she interrupted. This isn't about sides. It's about accountability. If we let every celebrity rewrite events based on emotion, we're just spreading confusion. The words hit harder than anyone expected. Whoopi's hand came up, signaling to the control room, but the producers didn't cut, too mesmerized to stop. Up in the balcony, a fan had her phone out, filming the entire exchange from a wide angle. Her video caught everything. The tight smiles, Joy mouthing, "Oh boy," under her breath, Whoopi gesturing frantically toward the floor manager, and the crowd leaning forward like witnesses at a trial. When the show came back for its final segment, everyone at the table wore the same expression, smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. The lights felt hotter now, the air heavier. Whoopi tried her best to sound calm, her tone like a mother stepping between two kids who'd been fighting all morning. We've had a passionate discussion today, she said. Let's end on something positive. Sunny gave a tight smile, then tilted her head toward Gal. You've talked a lot about compassion, Gal, she said, her voice soft but barbed. But some people think you use that word as a shield. That when you're criticized, you hide behind empathy instead of addressing the real issue. The audience reacted instantly. Some gasped, others whispered. Gal turned slowly, her composure unshaken. Empathy isn't a shield, she said evenly. It's a mirror. And when people look at it and don't like what they see, that's not my reflection. It's theirs. The reaction was immediate and explosive. The crowd clapped, cheered, even pounded on the desk. Whoopi blinked, caught between amusement and concern. Sunny's smile froze, her eyes narrowing ever so slightly. The camera zoomed in, close enough to catch the flicker of pride in Gal's eyes and the tightness in Sunny's jaw. It was live television at its rawest, and everyone knew it. Then, something unexpected happened. A producer pointed to the audience for the next pre-screened question. A woman stood up, a former nurse, the wife of a veteran, and her voice trembled as she spoke. Both of you, she said, looking at Gal, then Sunny. You talk about truth, compassion, strength. But what does being human mean when the cameras are off? The room froze. Even Whoopi went quiet. The woman's hands shook as she tried to finish. Because sometimes I think people forget we're all just trying to survive. Security gave her a gentle nod to wrap it up, but she wasn't the only one tearing up now. Gal looked at her for a long moment before turning to face the camera directly. Her tone dropped, quieter, more personal. "If we only talk when we agree," she said, "we're not really listening. We're just waiting to speak." The studio went still. Even the crew stopped moving. It was the kind of silence that doesn't feel empty. It feels full. Then, just when it seemed the moment might end gracefully, Sunny leaned forward one last time. "That's beautiful, Gal," she said softly. "But strength without self-reflection becomes arrogance." The audience tensed. Gal didn't hesitate. "And self-righteousness without compassion becomes cruelty." For a second, everything hung in the air, the applause, the shock, the weight of two truths colliding. Then the crowd broke, half cheering, half silent, all charged. It wasn't just a debate anymore. It was history happening in real time, and everyone in that room knew they'd just witnessed something that would outlive the broadcast. When the credits rolled, the room stayed tense. A producer tried to guide Gal off stage, but she paused. Sunny stayed seated, unreadable, hands still on the table. For a second, the noise faded, and only the silence between them mattered. In the hallway, they crossed paths again. Gal stopped first. "You fight hard," she said quietly. "I respect that. But sometimes fighting is about being human." Sunny nodded once. "And sometimes being human means being wrong." Neither smiled. They just understood. Down the hall, a young booker ran to the control room. "Legal says scrub the hot mic," she whispered. The executive producer didn't look up. "Scrub what we can. The audience phones own the rest." Whoopi leaned against the wall, exhaling. "We'll be trending in 10, she said, shaking her head. "Let's keep it graceful." By that night, the internet had taken over. Split-screen edits flooded every feed. Gal saying, "Empathy isn't a shield, it's a mirror." Sunny firing back with, "Strength without reflection becomes arrogance." People picked sides, hashtags flew. Hashtag Team Gal, hashtag Team Sunny, hashtag The View Showdown. The View posted the full clip, hoping for context. It didn't help. Comments split 50-50. Sunny tweeted, "Accountability isn't cruelty," then deleted it. Gal's rep released one calm line. "Open dialogue, even when it's difficult." It went viral in minutes. Inside the network, a memo warned staff, "Check mics, confirm cuts, stay alert." Advertisers wanted timestamps. Meanwhile, a professor's video titled "When Empathy Meets Ego" hit 1 million views overnight. But one quiet video rose above the noise, a montage of Gal just listening, saying nothing. Her eyes steady, her face calm. The title read, "When Listening is the Loudest Thing." And somehow, that silence spoke louder than everything else. The photo went everywhere. Gal walking off stage, her silhouette lit by the exit light, head high, shoulders back. One simple image that said everything without a word. A calm voice played over the clip. "Questioning without empathy becomes cruelty. Empathy without reflection becomes excuse. The line is thin. The stakes are human." The next morning, producers argued. "Bring them back for a follow-up?" one said. "Too soon," another replied. Nobody agreed, but everyone knew the story wasn't finished. If you were watching this unfold live, what would you have done? Sided with the host or stood with Gal? Tell us in the comments below. Your voice matters. And if you love stories that pull back the curtain on Hollywood's most explosive on-air moments, don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on the bell so you never miss what really happens behind the cameras.